Welcome to the continuation of coordination. So we have looked at the introduction and also the endocrine system. In this video, we're going to take a look at the nervous system. Then in the videos after this one, we're going to take a look at the brain, the sense organ, the eye, and the sense organ, the ear. So I've looked at the endocrine system. Now we go to the nervous system, which is just a system of coordination in animals made up of the following three parts: the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. So this diagram gives us an idea on the three parts of the nervous system. So the brain, of course, it's this one here. The spinal cord is this, which goes from all the way from the head to the lower part here. Then there are these nerves, this network of which appear to be like lines. These ones, these are nerves. They are connected to the spinal cord and the brain, like so. Okay, so these are the three parts that makes up the nervous system. So the brain and the spinal cord together make up what is called the central nervous system. So the brain and the spinal cord make up the CNS, or the central nervous system. Well, the nerves make up what is called peripheral nervous system, or PNS. So nerves that are joined to the brain are called cranial nerves. Well, those ones which are joined to the spinal cord are called spinal nerves. So normally, actually, when you see the word cranial, you have to know it has to do with the brain or the head. So we're going to be meeting this word again. Okay, so that's it. So in the nervous system, messages are transmitted in form of electric impulses, also called nerve impulses. So messages in the nervous system travel in form of electricity. Okay, so they are electric impulses, which are also called nerve impulses. So next we look at the functional unit of the nervous system called neurons or nerves. Neurons or nerves. So the basic functional unit of the nervous system are neurons or nerve cells. Types of neurons include the sensory neuron, the relay neuron, and the motor neurons. So there are three types of neurons: sensory neurons, relay neurons, and motor neurons. Relay neurons are also called intermediate neurons. Okay, we're going to study each of these type of neurons. We'll look at its features and what it basically does. So these are the diagrams of the three types of neurons. The motor neuron looks like this. Okay, it has this part here, which is the cell body. The cell body has got these strands here called dendrite. Okay, then the tail is called the axon. The axon has got what is called the myelin sheath. Okay, so the myelin sheath are these here. Okay, these are called myelin sheath. Okay, then of course we have the sensory neuron, which has a special type of a cell called receptor cell, which makes it a bit different from the other neurons. Okay, then again it also has the axon, then the myelin sheath, and of course the cell body is here instead of being on the end. Okay, then we have the axon, which is all this. Okay, so then the relay neuron, the cell body is just like the one for motor neuron, and of course dendrite, then the axon. Okay, so we're going to look at each type of a neuron, its features, and what it does, which is different from the others. So let's take a look at the functions of the common parts of all the three neurons. So the dendrites, those strands, what they do is they collect impulses from neighboring cells. So the way these neurons are arranged is they are connected. Okay, so one neuron is going to be connected to another. So when there's an electric impulse flowing in one neuron, the other one has to collect that impulse. Okay, so dendrites are the one that collect those impulses. The next part is the axon, the tail. So this carries impulses from one end of the neuron to another. The third is the synaptic knob. So this forms a link with other neurons. Then after that, we've got the nodes of Ranvier and the myelin sheath, which basically help impulses to move faster. Okay, so as we're going through each type, you're going to see the dendrite and the axon and the synaptic knob, the nodes of Ranvier and the myelin sheath, and you are going to appreciate these functions here. You're going now to connect and see that, okay, the dendrite, because of the way it looks, it makes sense that it collects impulses from neighboring cells. So we're going to start with the sensory neurons. These are neurons that carry impulses from sense organs, also called receptors, to the central nervous system. So a sense organ and the receptor, of course, is an organ that detects a stimulus and conveys information about it to electrical impulses. So what happens is the sense organs, which of course are the five senses: the skin, the tongue, the nose, the ear, the eye. These ones, they are going to detect impulses. They are going to detect a stimulus and convert that stimulus to an electric impulse. For example, for the eye, when light enters the eye, that light is going to be detected and it's going to be converted to electrical impulses. Okay, so when those electrical impulses are converted, they are going to travel in sensory neurons. So they are going to pass through lots of sensory neurons that are connected, and they are going to be taken to the central nervous system, which is the spinal cord and the brain. Okay, so that's what sensory neurons are about. They get information from sense organs and transmit this information to the central nervous system. So characteristics of sensory neurons include the following. First, they carry impulses from sense organs to the central nervous system. Second, they have long dendrons and short axons. Their cell bodies are not terminally located but are axillary located, meaning that they are not located at the end but they are located in between. So the cell bodies of sensory neurons are not located at the end but in between. So here is an example of a sensory neuron. So as you can see here, the cell body here, it's in between, not at the end. Okay, so then we have the synaptic knob here, which connects. It's like a fork which connects or links with other sensory neurons. Okay, then of course we have the node of Ranvier and the myelin sheath that helps impulses travel faster. Okay, then we have the sensory receptor here, which of course is connected to the sensory organ so that it detects stimuli and converts that stimuli to electrical impulses. So these ones which I've mentioned, synaptic knob, axon, cell body, nodes of Ranvier, myelin sheath, sensory receptors, are the key characteristics of the sensory neuron. And also keep in mind that the cell body is on the center, not on the center, is in between but not at the end of the neuron. The next is a motor neuron. So these are neurons that carry impulses from the central nervous system to effectors. So sensory neurons take impulses from the sense organs to the central nervous system. Motor neurons do the opposite. They get impulses from the central nervous system and they take these impulses to what are called effectors. What are effectors? An effector is any part of the body that carries out a response to a nervous impulse. Okay, so in short, an effector is any part of the body that's going to do something that's going to do something as commanded by a nervous impulse. So it receives an electric signal from the nervous system through the motor neurons. It will do something. That's what an effector is. A very good example of an effector is a muscle, as you are going to see. So most effectors are glands or body organs such as muscles. Motor neurons have the following characteristics. 1. They carry impulses from the central nervous system to the effectors. 2. They have long axons and short dendrites. So they have long axons and short dendrites. This is opposite to sensory neurons. Sensory neurons have long dendrites and short axons. Their cell bodies are terminally located, again different from sensory neurons. By terminally located, it means the cell bodies are at the end, not in between. So this is an example of a motor neuron. So I have the synaptic knob here, which makes sure that it locks or it connects or it links with another neuron. Then we have the myelin sheath here, which of course helps the impulses to travel faster, and of course it's found in the axon just like any other neuron, together with the nodes of Ramja. Then we have the nucleus here, in the cell body. We have the nucleus, cytoplasm. Any cell body is made of the nucleus and cytoplasm. Then we have, of course, the dendrites here, which collect impulses from a neighboring neuron. Okay, so when you are given a diagram, if they ask you, is this a motor neuron or a sensory neuron, just from the location of the cell body you should be able to tell. Okay, last we look at relay neuron. So a relay neuron forms a link between a sensory neuron and motor neuron. So let's picture this situation where you accidentally touch on a hot object. So the sense organ, in this case, which is the skin, is going to detect that the object you have touched is hot and it can destroy your body. So this information is going to be converted to electrical impulses and will be detected or collected by the sensory neuron. The sensory neuron will take to the central nervous system to report. Okay, so the sensory nervous system, the central nervous system is going now to give instruction to the motor neuron. So the motor neuron is going to tell the muscles to move that hand. Okay, now between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron, there is a relay neuron which connects the two neurons. So the relay neuron is also called the intermediary neuron. It is also called intermodal neuron. There's different names. Okay, so for those who are familiar with athletics, I think you know what relays are. So this person will be running with something in their hand and they're going to give that something to someone else. That someone else is also going to run and will give to another one, just like that, just like that. Okay, so that's what relay neuron do. They get information from the sensory neuron together with the commands that come from the central nervous system. They send the information to the motor neuron. So they act as a link between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. And because of this, they are found in the central nervous system. So their structure is like this. They usually have a large cell body with a very small axon like this, of course having the nucleus and the cytoplasm. Okay, and of course these are dendrites and all. Okay, so that's all about a relay neuron. So now we have talked about neurons being connected. So sensory neurons, it's when you touch a hot object, it's not one sensory neuron that's going to get that information and take it to the brain. This sensory neuron is a single cell, so it's going to be connected to another cell, to another cell, to another cell, such that they form some sort of a tissue, okay, which is just a group of cells. Okay, so these cells, the way they behave is they are not direct in contact, they have gaps. Okay, these gaps have special functions that make sure that information is transferred efficiently from one neuron to another. Okay, that gap is called a synapse. So a synapse is a junction between two neurons. The neurons at the synapses are not joined to each other but have gaps between them called synaptic gaps, also called synaptic clefts. Okay. Next, we take a look at a reflex action. What is a reflex action? So this is an automatic and stereotyped response to a stimulus. Stereotyped, automatic, which means it happens without your control. stereotype, it behaves in a certain way. Okay, so examples of reflex actions include withdrawing of a hand from a hot object. When you touch a hot object, you don't even have to think. You don't have time to think if you should remove your hand or not. When you just touch it, automatically you are going to behave in a stereotyped way, in a certain way. Okay, so you're going to remove your hand from that object. So that's a reflex action. The next one is jumping up after sitting on a pin. So sit on a pin, you won't even think, should I stand up or what? You just jump up. The next one is blinking when an object approaches the eye. We don't even sometimes know that we have blinked when something is approaching our eyes. The other one, which is an interesting one, which we're also going to study in details, is a knee jerk reflex. So this is where someone hits you on the knee. So there's always an automatic and stereotyped response that you do. There's also shedding of tears when an object enters the eye. So as soon as an object enters the eye, then tears will just come out. You don't have to think, should I shed off tears? No, there's nothing like that. So this is the knee jerk reflex, where someone hammers you just here. When this happens, even as I'm explaining, you can feel it. You know what to do when someone hammers you here. Okay, so you're going to straighten your leg. So there are two types of reflex actions, namely spinal and cranial reflexes. From the name, you can tell what they are about. So spinal reflex has to do with the spinal cord, and it's where impulses pass through the spinal cord. Well, cranial reflex is where impulses pass through the brain. So let's look at what is called a reflex arc, where we're going to do a detailed study of a reflex action. So a reflex arc is just a path traveled by nerve impulse during a reflex action. So let's take a look at this diagram. So let's say an object is approaching your eye. So the receptor in your eye is going to detect this approaching object. So once it detects, it's going to convert this information into an electrical impulse, which is going to be collected by the sensory neuron, which is going to travel till it reaches the central nervous system. So in the central nervous system, the relay neuron is going to collect information from the sensory neuron and relay it to the motor neuron. So the motor neuron now is going to take this information to the effector, which are the muscles which are going to make sure that that eye closes. Okay, so that's how a reflex action occurs. Another good example is this one, the knee jerk action. So when they hit you with a hammer here, the receptors here are going to get this information. Then they are going to pass. They are going to take this information to the sensory neuron. This one, the sensory neuron is going to take this information to the central nervous system. Okay, so in the central nervous system, which of course the spinal cord here, as you can see, and the brain here. So in the central nervous system, the relay neuron again is going to get that information and relay it to the motor neuron. So the motor neuron now is going to, the arrow for the motor neuron is supposed to be here, not here. So this is a sensory neuron, so a motor neuron is supposed to be this one. So the motor neuron, I don't know if you can see here, is going to take this information to the muscle, which is the effector, and it's going to tell it's going to act in such a way as to straighten the leg. Okay, it's going to act in such a way as to straighten the leg. So this is a reflex arc. So a question now can come, like give an example of a reflex arc or explain a reflex arc. You have to explain it in the same way as I've done in the diagram. So information, you can give an example of a knee jerk. So when you are hit on the knee, the receptor is going to get that information and convert it into electrical signals or electrical impulses. So these electrical impulses are going to be taken by the sensory neuron to the central nervous system. Then the neuron is going to receive that information, and with instruction from the central nervous system, it's going to transmit this information to the motor neuron. Then the motor neuron is going to instruct the effector to take action. In this case, our effector is a muscle. So other than those reflex action, there are also what are called conditioned reflexes. So these conditioned reflexes are reflexes that are conditioned. To be conditioned, you have to make something behave in a certain way. Okay, so a conditioned reflex is a response that results from learning or training. So this may be illustrated by Pavlov's experiment. So there was this Russian scientist, Pavlov. So he noticed that whenever dogs see food or smell food, they were salivating. So what he did was he used to ring a bell all the time when giving dogs food. Okay, so after some time, what he started doing is whenever he rings a bell, then the dogs were salivating even if there is no food. So the dogs were trained or were made to be salivating just by the sound of the bell. So this is an example of a conditioned reflex. So conditioning is used in training of animals for different tasks. In humans, activities such as walking, responding to a name, cycling, and driving are examples of conditioned reflexes. When you are walking, we don't do much thinking. We just walk without even thinking. So when we were young, we trained ourselves how to walk, or we were trained how to walk properly, and somehow we know how to do that without thinking about it. Even cycling, if someone calls your name, you're just going to answer, even if you haven't seen that person, or you are just going to try to see who is calling me, especially if you are somewhere where you don't think you are known. But if you're in an environment where you think you are known, you're going to answer. So this is conditioned this is conditioned reflex. These are good examples of conditioned reflexes. So this marks the end of the nervous system. Next, we're going to take a look at the brain, then we'll move to the two sense organs, the eye and the ear. Happy solving.